Hello and welcome back to this Thursday edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm Anthony Smith, along here with Kaylee Nix, and we have a very special guest with us, Lori Ann LaRocco. Lori Ann, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We just got an update on the state of the air cargo market from Aaron Coolish. And of course, people say you can't move it by sea, move it by air. And right now, there's really no hope for moving things by sea, right? What's going on with the maritime situation right now?
It's like the tsunami of container crushing hainosity continues.
Hmm?
One of the biggest things that I'm watching right now, of course, is what's going on in Yantian. And I'm really surprised that it's not getting uh, the news that it should be getting because this is a major port. There is a COVID outbreak in that part of China, where, of course, you're not getting a lot of information from the Chinese government as it relates to this outbreak. And you've had Maersk, you've had Hapag-Lloyd rerouting ships to kind of, avoid the area. You have 41 vessels anchored right now
Wow.
outside of that port. This is a major port, guys. You have about it's a major port for both European as well as U.S. Routes. 100 routes travel to and from this port alone. 60% to 80% of exports.
And so it seems like just when we get the backlog untied on the US side out throughout the West Coast, it shifts across the Pacific back towards China again and back towards those East Asian ports as well. And of course, we're talking about COVID. Is this kind of a new strain, or is this a resurgence of an original strain, or is it really impossible to tell because we're just not getting that information?
From the information that we've garnered, it looks like it's the Indian variant that we have unfortunately seen, sweeping through Asia. And what they're doing is you have 30% of the eastern portion of the terminal for Yantian open, and that's according to Maersk. So that way, at least when it comes to the flow of trade, those that are participating in the flow of trade will be able to provide us with this insight. The western portion of that terminal is closed.
Wow.
So it is definitely significant. When you're looking at the vessels that are out there, 44 cargo vessels are anchored at the port. 7 of those are empty. 22 are partially full. 11 are fully full. And when you're looking at that flow of trade, what's comprised of on those vessels is a combination of exports that have to come to both the United States and Europe, as well as the all important empty containers that we all know are in short supply. And that is driving up rates even more. And as you know, and you've covered it, how much higher can these rates go is really in question.
So, Lori Ann, I think that's one of the biggest parts, right? I mean, we're looking at those containers as those empty containers and really kind of being out of position. Does this situation, you think, exacerbate that trend all throughout the remainder of, or at least the mid part of 2020 into late 2021?
Oh, definitely. And what you're seeing is because you've got these vessels that are being diverted, right? Carriers have to kind of stick to some sort of schedule, and you got to use that term really squishy nowadays. But what happens is that it impacts the whole flow of trade. So while we're waiting for our stuff from, say, Asia, right, it's going to take about 10 days for this backlog to be fixed, all right, to get these exports out onto the vessels. But what happens is this also clogs the European route. So if you're an importer waiting for your packages, say so to speak, right from Europe, that's delayed as well. So it's just a massive conundrum of what we're seeing right now.
So let's come back to the United States side of things. And we're talking about how United States ports are starting to offer COVID-19 vaccines to those seafarers, which, as we talked about way back towards April on Midday Market Update, we weren't really sure how that was going to affect those seafarers if they were going to have equitable access to those vaccines. What have you seen with the United States ports kind of spurring this initiative to get them vaccinated? How is that going to impact them as they spend time at sea and travel internationally?
Well, it's wonderful to see the United States ports stepping up and supporting the seafarers. I recently spoke with the International Chamber of Shipping Secretary General again, who we spoke about last time when I was on. He tells me that it's still at a crisis level here. while we are getting shots in arms, we have 200,000 seafarers that will be impacted, not be able to get off of vessels because so many of our seafarers unfortunately reside in India, and we unfortunately see what is happening, with that part of the globe right now with COVID.
So, one of the things that I've been watching as a skeptical economist is great things are happening in the US. We're seeing, I think Lori Ann just kind of touched on that, we're seeing recovery rates here, but overseas it's not quite the same thing. So, with the increased consumption within our US borders, do you see this really kind of being a bigger issue as we kind of move throughout the year when we see the struggles of kind of getting those goods in? Do you think this is going to lead to like a more increase in maybe final prices for those consumers and really just a backlog of issues?
The issues are at this point limitless. I mean, when you look at the sonar data and you see the amount of product that is coming in the next 7 days, that's just now. And so, you've got this true surge of consumer demand where we're all, clicking away on Amazon and all of our favorite internet sites. And then you've got this backlog that we're seeing within China. It just creates an artificial tsunami of cargo, which really, unfortunately, is going to push us all the way through, at least until 2022. And that, of course, doesn't mention the problems that you guys have pointed on too, the intermodal congestion that we're seeing with the rails. Everything is interconnected with trade, and everything floats the proverbial boat, if you will, for trade.
Lori Ann, I don't know if you follow Tim Dooner on LinkedIn at all, but he just shared a video of port in Taiwan where there was a cargo ship that ran into a crane, knocked over a whole bunch of containers as well. So it seems like, once again, the hits just keep on coming for the shipping industry as well. I don't know if you can speak to any of the backlogs that we might see from that issue. Is that something that we could also see as well?
At this point, it's almost like common sense, right? So if you've got this backlog, you have another accident, another container goes overboard. I mean, how many containers have we lost, right, in the last year? We
Countless,
talk
right?
about these vessels, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like this race for size, right? So the larger the vessel, the more you can stack on. Well, it's also the more that can fall off.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's just one bottleneck after another. And then, of course, you've got the fire of what's going on in Sri Lanka. I mean, that's
Hmm.
an environmental disaster. And they knew about it back on May 11th that there was a problem on that boat, and yet nobody would take them in.
And we're going to be watching
So,
all of these, of course. Go follow Lori Ann and all of her things that she writes for both us and for CNBC. You can catch her on LinkedIn as well.